Imagine a world where the sun doesn't just set, it dies. As the solar bark of Ra descends into the earth, it passes through the gates, guarded by serpents, until it reaches the most desolate region of all, the Rosetu, the land of passages. Unlike the lush fields of the afterlife you might expect, this place is a vast, silent desert of sand and darkness. There is no river here. The sun god's boat must be transformed into a serpent-headed sledge just to be dragged across the dunes. And there, in the pitch-black heart of this wasteland, sits a god, as much a part of the earth as the rocks themselves. He is Sokar. He doesn't look like the golden kings of the living world. In artwork, he is often mummified with the head of a falcon. His skin sometimes pasted with a ghostly white or a deep earthly green. He sits upon a throne that is actually a burial mound, a hidden mound, that represents the first piece of land to rise from the chaos. But Sokar isn't just a guardian of the dead, he is a master of transformation. He is the patron of goldsmiths who hammered out the funeral masks of pharaohs. Just as a craftsman takes raw, cold metal and turns it into a shimmering masterpiece, Sokar takes the cold, silent body of the deceased and prepares it for fiery rebirth. When you look at his image on a tomb wall or a ceremonial Henu bark, you aren't just looking at a god of death. You're looking at the silent, patient power of the earth itself. The moment where the end of the journey becomes the beginning of something new. I'll be aiming to trace the evolution of Sokar's representation in art and its changing iconography over time. By examining various art historical sources, we can understand how the depiction of Sokar transformed in relation to the cultural and historical shifts. As opposed to how he's depicted in Stargate, he wasn't a devil in any way. He was another god, partly of the underworld, but in the super helpful way that most Egyptian gods actually were. My name is Renee, you're listening to Detours in Archaeology, and this is The Hidden Onion. Sokar, also spelled Sokar and in Greek Sokaris or Socharis, was a funerary god of the Memphite necropolis in the first Nome. He was also worshipped in Saqqara and was known as the patron of the living as well as the god of the resurrected dead. Sokar, or he who is on his sand, was also worshipped in Giza as the Lord of Rosetu, which was the entrance to the realm of the dead and elsewhere. Sokar was known by the epithet he of Rosetu, which refers to an area around the Giza pyramids, but relates more generally to any necropolis and to the entrance of the underworld. He is known as the Lord of the mysterious region, and the great god with his two wings opened, referring to his origins as a hawk or falcon deity. Although the meaning of his name remains uncertain, the Egyptians in the pyramid text linked his name to the anguished cry of Osiris to Isis, Sikuri, hurry to me, or possibly Sokar, spelled S-K-R, could be a shortened version of Sokar and Ra, meaning cleaning the mouth of Ra. Sokar could also mean adorn one, decorate one, or even possibly sail. In the later periods, in the underworld, Sokar is strongly linked to two other gods, Ptah, the creator god and chief god of Memphis, and Osiris, the god of the dead. This connection is expressed by the triple god, Ptah, Sokar, Osiris, which I'll discuss more later. But as a standalone, he is commonly depicted as a hawk or falcon, or as a man with a hawk or falcon head, sometimes, usually, mummified, and is often set within intricate scenes related to funerary rites. He is also, in some accounts, a solar deity, celebrated in the Temple of Sokar in Memphis. His iconography dates to the early dynastic period, with representations found in artifacts such as the stela and tomb murals of the Old Kingdom. The earliest evidence of Sokar appearing in funerary context, emphasizing his role as a protector of the deceased during their journey to the afterlife. Sokar was an interesting case study in beings that are not directly connected to other gods. In ancient Egyptian mythology, the god Sokar is generally considered a deity with no direct or formalized parentage. Unlike many other gods who belong to established family trees like the Aeneid, so Isis, Osiris, Horus, sometimes Hathor, and Nephthys and Set, Sokar is one of the unique figures who likely originated as a local hawk totem in the Nemphite necropolis before becoming a universal funerary deity. Scholars, and me, find him fascinating because he lacks a formal biological lineage, with ancient texts even calling him both father and mother to suggest that he is a self-made primordial force. While the pyramid texts include the play on words linking his name to the cry, "Hurry to me," it could just be clever etymology rather than an actual birth story. Instead of parents, he is defined by his quote-unquote brothers through syncretism, eventually merging with Ptah and Osiris to represent the complete cycle of life, death, and rebirth. His family life is just as unconventional. He has no clear children, though Radoja is occasionally mentioned as a son, and while he is sometimes paired with Nephthys, he is more officially linked to Sekhmet via his connection to Ptah, and sometimes even Neith, the goddess of darkness. The earliest known references to a ceremony called going round the walls appear on the Palmero stone. The Palmero stone is one of 7 surviving fragments of a stela known as the Royal Annals of the Old Kingdom. The stela listed the kings of Egypt from the first dynasty, 3150 to 2890 BCE, through the early part of the 5th dynasty, 2498 to 2345 BCE, with recorded significant events during each year of their reigns, including inundation periods, so when the Nile flooded, measurements of the height of the Nile flood, and details of festivals, taxation, sculptures, buildings, and warfare. One hypothesis is that the stone was carved during the 5th dynasty, circa 2400 BCE, though it has also been suggested that it was carved over time. This latter idea makes more sense to me, as who would remember Nile height measurements from hundreds of years earlier? But you never know, they might have found their own records. Although the original location and context of the Palermo stone are unknown, the fragments are held at the Regional Archaeological Museum Antonio Salinas in Palermo, Italy, from which it derives its name. There are also 5 fragments in the Royal Annals in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, and 1 small fragment in the Petrie Museum at the University College London, forming part of the collection of archaeologist Sir Flinders Petrie. The references were written consistently during an ascension year, as hundreds of years of kings and dynasties were carved into stone. By the way, this list of kings also includes the hieroglyphic names of pre-dynastic kings on one side, but doesn't really give any information besides. Focusing on the festival rituals, there is no clear evidence linking the Palmero stone festivals to the celebration of Sokar. However, the recording of festival rituals on stone was incredibly common, so I wouldn't be surprised if a mention of some part of the Sokar festival appeared somewhere on the tablet. Another type of entry is more specific and has been interpreted as the Festival of Sokar, possibly as part of the specific years when Ninetjer of the 2nd dynasty participated in Sokar-related feasts alongside the other gods and royal activities every 6 years. This interpretation was widely accepted until recent times, when it does come into question, but I'm not sure what the right answer is. But it makes more sense after adding in a small fragment of the annals, the Cairo stone, which may record further events belonging to Ninetjer's later reign, another festival of Sokar in his 24th year on the throne, although, like the other fragments, the dating is still uncertain. Early images of Sokar often connect him with life after death, highlighting his association with agricultural fertility, as seen in Egyptian art featuring vines and farming scenes. Throughout Egyptian history, his symbols frequently appear alongside daily life and farming activities. However, it's important to consult reliable sources to support these ideas, as current references don't fully substantiate them and could be mixing in Sokar artistic references as well. But this artwork depicts Sokar as a symbol of renewal and protection. Some of the earliest images of Sokar show him seated on a silver boat called the Henu, dated to 3100 BCE to 2686 BCE during the early dynastic period. Like many other gods, he was often depicted with the Waz scepter. In this case, though, it plays more into Sokar's duties. The scepter not only symbolizes power, but it's also the tool of an extremely important ritual that took place during the mummification process, the opening of the mouth, which I looked into for my master's thesis, Chapter 3. The process is not only depicted on the walls of tombs, but miniature versions were also buried with the deceased as amulets inside the mummy's wrappings from the Old Kingdom into the Roman period. They were made out of dark materials, including glass and glit, and generally took the shape of two fingers to invoke the ritualistic meaning of the opening of the mouth by Horus, as described on a tomb wall. The words spoken by the Sem priest, Lector priest, and Is priest standing around him, a person called En, were, "My father, my father, my father, my father, O En, your mouth is something. I have balanced your mouth and bones for you. En, I have opened your mouth for you. En, I open your mouth for you with the Nuah blade. I have opened your mouth for you with the Nuah blade. The Meskhetu blade of iron that opens the mouths of the gods. Horus is the opener of the mouth of En. Horus has opened the mouth of En. Horus has opened the mouth of En with that which he has opened the mouth of his father, with which he opened the mouth of Osiris. With the iron that came from Seth, the Meskhetu blade of iron, with which the mouths of the gods were opened. May you open the mouth of En with it, so he may walk and speak with his body before the great 9 gods in the great mansion of the official that is in Unu. And so he may take up with your white crown there before Horus, lord of the nobility." Paintings like this guided the journey to the afterlife, explaining origins and purpose. Horus had to open Osiris's mouth before mummification so he could speak prayers in the afterlife. This ritual for preserved knowledge after death, as the dead answered the gods' questions during the heart-weighing ceremony. If they failed to answer as expected, Amut would devour them, ending even their souls. Though the god changed from Horus to Sokar over the millennia, the opening of the mouth ritual symbolizes the creation of a perfect afterlife. Like other burial amulets, it has a metaphysical connection. Writings, paintings, and prayers on tombs become real in the afterlife. So wishes, spoken or written, are represented by the Waz scepter, enabling the deceased to continue prayers and live forever in a self-created world made possible by knowledge and speech. Originally venerated as a totem, Sokar was later regarded as a personified hawk or falcon during the Old Kingdom, 2686 to 2613 BCE. He appears in the earliest versions of the pyramid text as the creator of royal bones. And the Book of the Dead says that he fashions a foot basin of silver, the material of the gods' bones. He was typically depicted as seated on a throne, holding the Waz scepter and the Ankh symbol for life. As Egyptian culture evolved, so did the artistic representations of Sokar. In the Middle Kingdom, Sokar's imagery changed, increasingly linked to the Osirian cycle, resulting in artwork that highlighted themes of resurrection and rebirth. Tomb paintings from this period grew more detailed, showcasing not only falcon symbols, but also scenes of the funerary rites associated with Sokar. At Abydos, dating from 2055 BCE at the start of the Middle Kingdom, a dedicated chamber for Sokar was part of the large Osiris temple, while carvings depict a unique festival celebrating Sokar before the festival of Osiris. During this period, Sokar was often combined with Ptah to form a composite deity called Sokar. This figure symbolized the soil and its ability to create and sustain life. Since Ptah was regarded as the protector of artisans because of his skills in metallurgy and his regenerative powers, Sokar became explicitly associated with protecting goldsmiths, even though he had previously been more closely connected to silver. Some parts of the extensive pyramid text describe Sokar helping the king undergo rebirth and transferring divine royal powers to the king's son and heir. Sokar also clearly played a role in the body's transformation after death and in the opening of the mouth ritual. The ceremony plays a vital role in restoring a person's senses and vitality in the afterlife. Without it, the spirit could not eat, drink, or move, underscoring Sokar's essential role. Soon after, Sokar was also linked with Osiris as the composite deity Ptah Sokar Osiris. This combined figure symbolized three universal aspects: creation, stability, and death. By the New Kingdom, images shift to a hawk-headed mummy wielding a waz scepter, a flail, and a crook, most likely a connection to Osiris's symbols holding their regal tools. Sokar usually stands on a funerary mound, possibly the primeval mound, and wears the sun disk, cow horns, and regal cobras similar to the Atef crown. He is also sometimes seen with the white crown, and as a falcon deity, he is also frequently associated with Horus and shown wearing the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. Also during the New Kingdom, the Book of the Dead shows Sokar merging the forms of Osiris and Ptah. Subsequently, Ptah Osiris evolved into Sokar Osiris, representing the nocturnal sun in the 4th and 5th hours of the Duat. The Sokar priests continued to use the titles once held by Memphite priests of Ptah in the Old Kingdom. However, they now mainly refer to the high priest of Heliopolis. Ptah Sokar Osiris is typically shown as a mummified hawk adorned with royal regalia. However, he is also depicted as a pygmy with a scarab beetle on his head symbolizing Keper. These representations of Ptah Sokar Osiris likely inspired the deity Herodontus called Patekos. Although Sokar was married to Sekhmet, in some iterations, Sokar is occasionally associated with Memphis. Specifically during the 18th dynasty, around 1323 BCE, a detailed gold statue of Sokar was placed in King Tut's tomb, although some think that it depicts Horus. The image that I show on the website is labeled as Horus, but it shows the god mummified, which Horus never is. Even in the 22nd dynasty, around 945 to 730 BCE, a Libyan-led dynasty originating from Meshwesh tribe ruled during the Third Intermediate Period, bringing temporary stability but eventually leading to fragmentation. During this period, Sokar returned to his original silver connections via images of the god on a silver coffin, which was rarer than gold in Egypt, of the king Shushok II, circa 890 BCE, discovered in Tanis. Yes, the place that they were digging up in the first Indiana Jones movie. In the late period, representations of Sokar became more stylized and detailed in their iconography. The integration of diverse artistic influences, including Hellenistic styles, produced hybrid depictions that blended traditional Egyptian imagery with newer artistic forms. This stylistic combination reflects broader social and political shifts in Egypt as different cultures interacted, influencing how Sokar would have been depicted, although it is not confirmed that the Hellenistic style had a specific influence on Sokar's iconography. During Rome's rule over Egypt in 198 to 217 CE, the final known depiction of Sokar, represented as Sokar Osiris with the falcon's head, was engraved into the Isis temple at Philae. This artwork remains today due to the temple's excellent preservation. It may have moved between islands when the Aswan Dam was built, but it is still perfectly recreated. Philae stayed accessible longer than any other Egyptian temple, remaining open until Byzantine Emperor Justinian ordered its closure in 535 CE. By that time, most temples had already fallen into ruin centuries earlier. The way that the body was placed inside the coffin was seen as similar to the soul's journey into the Duat, a mysterious, unseen realm. In the late period, the connection between the sarcophagus and the sky becomes clearer. Notably, before the New Kingdom, Egyptians didn't distinctly show the sun's nighttime journey on burial walls. However, one side of the coffin featured a drawing of two eyes, symbolizing the dead's rebirth and their ability to see the sun, Ra's, movement through the Duat. This idea became even more vivid in the royal tombs of the New Kingdom, where the interior of the sarcophagus chamber was decorated with scenes depicting the sun's journey through the underworld at night. The coffin's lid was semicircular and adorned with scenes illustrating the sun's path across the sky. Sometimes the side walls near the foot and the head of the coffin had two columns, representing the pillars supporting the sky and the horizons where the sun rises and falls. This made the coffin lid a symbol of both the sky and the celestial body over the horizon. This symbolism appears on paintings of the wooden coffin of Dej-Huti-Iu-Funk, a Theban priest of Matu from the 7th century BCE. At the front of each coffin are images of the reborn sun, linking the head to the eastern mountains called Baku and the foot to the western mountain Manu. Near the foot, there's an inscription on a column that reads, "An offering given by the king to Ta Sokar. All necessary secret things are made for him during the festival of Osiris, the god beloved of Dej-Huti-Iu-Funk." This refers to the rituals performed during the flood season. Mentioning the Osiris festivals makes sense here because they were connected to the 70-day period when the constellations Orion, representing Osiris, and Sirius appeared invisible. That time marked the gods and the individual's passage into the Duat. The depiction of Sokar also demonstrates the influence of interactions between Egypt and the neighboring cultures. For example, during the Ptolemaic period, Egyptian art more frequently adopted Greek iconographic features. This blending is important because it shows how the foreign artistic styles affected traditional representation of gods, indicating a shift in cultural identity expressed through art. Nevertheless, the available sources do lack detailed evidence to fully confirm this influence. Festivals for the god Sokar are known as early as the Old Kingdom, most likely. Though by the time of the New Kingdom, the festival had grown to include a celebration in Thebes, where it became as prominent as the Opet festival. It is believed that the festival honored Osiris's rebirth and emphasized the pharaoh's ongoing authority. During the New Kingdom, Sokar's cult was particularly significant in the Egyptian religion, as shown by the numerous structures built in his honor. The Sokar festival was a key component of the Assyrian celebration during the month of Koyak, depicting different stages of Osiris's resurrection after his murder by Set. These celebrations occurred at the start of the agricultural season, with rituals aimed at the awakening of the soil's vitality and promoting its fertility. According to the calendar of Ramses III from Medinet Habu in the 20th dynasty, the Sokar or Chuyak festival was held in Memphis on the 26th day of Koyak, the 4th month of Aket, for sowing, a 30-day period between December and January. It was a key funerary celebration within a broader 10-day Osiris festival. The night before, on the 25th of Koyak, during the Festival of Two Goddesses, Egyptians made necklaces of 5 onions and wore them around their necks. These 5 onions were associated with the teeth of Osiris or Horus and linked to the right of the opening of the mouth, intended to revive the 5 senses of a dead person. This onion celebration likely continued into the next day, as depicted on wall carvings as the Day of Chewing Onions, where baskets of onions were brought to the temple for Sokar to taste and then used to prepare food for festival attendees. Sokar gets the spirit of the onion through rituals, and then the actual food is used by the living mortals. This Onion Day takes place just before the mysteries of Osiris begin, although this was also described as mid-autumn as part of the months-long Opet festival. Perhaps there were 2 onion festivals, but that's like right in the middle of the inundation period, so I don't know why they'd be celebrating the same way. Either way, as part of the festivals in Akhet, Sokar's followers continue to wear the strings of onions around the necks during the day, showing his underworld aspect. This is because onions were used in embalming people, sometimes the skin, sometimes the entire onion. Which makes me wonder if that is where the garlic aversion came from for vampires. The underworld doorway, a place where they cannot cross. But I digress. When just the skin was used, it would be placed on the eyes and inside the ears to mask the smell. Also, the god was depicted assisting in various tasks, such as digging ditches and canals. During the festival, various events featured a large statue of the god being carried on a henu bark, a boat characterized by a high prow shaped like an oryx and included a funerary chest. Egyptians performed rituals such as hoeing the earth and cattle driving, suggesting Sokar's role as an agricultural deity. People carrying bunches of onions followed Sokar's bark during the procession around the temple walls. This ceremony symbolized the solar journey and involved magical protection from evil forces. In addition to this procession, worshippers likely visited the necropolis to offer sacrifices to the deceased. Later, the procession moved to the Tent of Purification, where funeral rites took place. One of the early rites of the Osirian festivities was the plowing of the soil, and it was linked to Sokar's festival, representing the release of Osiris's life forces hidden in the soil as seeds. In this context, Sokar, as a god of dead soil, acted as a mediator between death and Osiris's rebirth. The Koyak festivals concluded on the 30th day with the ritual of the raising of the Jet pillar, symbolizing Osiris's complete resurrection. During the Ptolemaic period, since the winter solstice coincided with this date, the 2 events became connected. However, the Sokar festival itself is much older, with references dating it back to early Egyptian texts. The festival is supposed to symbolize the return of sunlight after the darkest winter days, which connects to Sokar's realm, the darkest area, before Ra is brought back to life. The known example comes from the New Kingdom, specifically a pictorial document found in the second courtyard of Ramses III's temple at Medinet Habu. It depicts the Sokar festival that took place on the 26th of Koyak, as shown on the south and southeast walls. The main focus is a procession of the Hedu bark, similar to what we see in other images. The divine boat of Sokar was also shown with 5 other boats, each representing a goddess: Hathor, Wadjet, Sekhmet, Bastet, and Sekhmet again. Of these, 3, Hathor and Wadjet in the top part and Bastet in the bottom part, each sit on a high throne. One has a small chapel, and the 5th, Sekhmet, has 4 bars that resemble those on a now. Above these boats, a repeated symbol probably stands for a got or a gawet, a bundle or tribute, with 4 or 5 circles, suggesting it refers to more than one. These boats are shown loaded with offerings. It's unlikely that these boats and goddesses appear randomly in the festival. Since Sokar is never pictured with a female partner, their appearance must mean something important. These goddesses are clearly connected to the festival. Hathor as the mother goddess and protector of birth, love, and death, Hathor of Dendra, linked to rebirth, growth, and renewal, Bastet with her complex and sometimes fiery nature, Neith and Sekhmet, warrior goddesses, Neith of war and magic, and Sekhmet of fighting and plagues. All of them symbolize different aspects of Sokar, representing parts of the god of potential life within death. One of the earliest notable portable boats was the Henu bark of Sokar. It was placed on a special sledge called a mifix and carried around the walls of Memphis during festivals honoring the god. By the Old Kingdom, the Henu bark had developed a distinct shape. It rested on a frame reinforced by 4 legs and mounted on a sledge. Its upturned prow featured the head of an antelope or oryx head facing backwards and horizontal stays, while the stern sloped upward and was decorated with 2 steering oars. Inside the boat, a falcon was often depicted. This original design continued into the New Kingdom with added decoration. Sometimes behind the antelope's head, you could see the head of a bull facing forward with a cord or leash hanging from its mouth. Also common were a bulty fish and 6 small falcons behind the prow. The number of steering oars increased over time, reaching 4. During the New Kingdom, a small chapel was placed amidships. It was topped with or squatting with a falcon, and the sacred image inside was visible. Bastet was frequently depicted as a woman with a lioness's head and an uraeus, similar to Sekhmet, but different goddess, although sometimes they get confusing. Of particular importance is the upturned stern, which features the antelope, gazelle, oryx head facing backwards while sniffing a lotus flower bud. This design resembles the form of the god Sokar's prow and to some extent that of Nekhbet's bark. The antelope, Oryx gazellia, if you want to get technical, it's regarded as the sacred animal of the desert, was sacrificed during the New Kingdom with its head offered to Sokar or his bark. In several tombs, the scenes of everyday life and offerings are depicted alongside lists of festivals dedicated to solar and lunar deities. For example, in the Sokar tombs of the nobles Ihi and Kagemni, the scenes of offerings and slaughtering a bull are next to the list of feasts associated with the cults of Thoth, Osiris, Sokar, and Ra. Such a neighborhood of pictures and festival inscriptions shows the semantic relationship between everyday life and the solar-lunar cycle, between the deceased world and the world of the gods. As I mentioned, the most complete depictions of the Sokar festival covered the entire register of the south wall within the second court of Ramses III's temple, extending to the southern portion of the east wall as well. In the depictions, before the procession, the gods who accompany Sokar, may they grant eternity as the king of the 2 lands to Ramses III, and may they incline their hearts towards Ramses III that he may celebrate jubilees forever. And praise to thee, O Sokar Osiris, great God, Lord of Shittayet, may thou give life, stability, and dominion to Ramses III forever. In scene 1, the king, elevating offerings to his father, is standing before Sokar, who sits on a throne and the dais platform and promises him a lifespan like Ref and earthly kingship like Heartsease, 2 names of ancient people, whether legendary or real. Ref didn't come with any results other than the god Ra, so I don't have any more information on that, but Heartsease was the name of multiple people. 2 priests, a prophet, and 1 king. Unfortunately, the king ruled during the 22nd dynasty, 270 to 300 years after Ramses III ruled when this stela was made. Behind Sokar, in the carving, sits 2 groups of 3 deities, indicating a plurality of gods. The upper group is the Aeneid within the Shittayet, while the lower group is the Aeneid residing in the Great Mansion. The 2 Aeneids come together to promise the customary life, health, and dominion eternally. In scene 3, wearing a headcloth, the king is performing a litany of offerings to Sokar in all of his names, before the characteristic Henu bark of Sokar housed within a shrine accompanied by the usual ritual accoutrement. Between the king and the god is an offering formula called in ancient Egyptian Hitep Jid Neswat, which translates to an offering given by the king, and is followed by the name of a deity and the list of offerings given. Also between the king and god are altars, covered with the litany of the forms of Sokar, as well as texts addressed to Sokar. Shittayet in the residence in Hayret Ib in Restau, presiding over Restau, upon the desert hills, upon his sand, his places within Restau, in Tianan's, presiding over the divine booth of the craftsman, in all his places within Lower Egypt, lands of so many names that I don't know how to say, in the foreign lake, in the northern lake, in his temples, in all of his establishments, in his divine booths, in every place in which by the gift of King Ramses III festival eternally. In scene 4, in short, the royal procession and bark depicts the king following the god during a promenade as the procession moves around the walls. The Sokar Henu bark is carried by 16 priests, and the scene is officially named drawing along Ta Sokar Osiris in order to go round the walls by the king himself. Yes, that was the whole name. The god then gives the king the usual promises of valor, provision, sustenance, etc. Scene 5, known as Sokar Enters or the Bringing in Sokar ceremony, after a priest carries a falcon on a banner labeled as Horus upon his papyrus staff, the second part of the scene shows the two lines of courtiers, royal sons, and prophets holding the long ends of a cord, which the midpoint is held by Ramses III following after them. Preceding them walks a lector priest, called a Keriheb in ancient Egyptian, meaning carrier of the book of ritual. He is reciting from a scroll. The main text of this scene are the words which the chief lector priest utters when Sokar enters. Hail, be triumphant, O sovereign. In scene 6, the grand procession, it's the largest scene in the whole series and is divided into 2 rows. In front, the priests carry the 5 sacred boats, Nefertum banners, the blue lotus-symboled god of creation, and a box of 5 keys. I don't know, maybe about 5, but that might be a thing of chaos, so it isn't Senate, so I'm not sure. The whole group is preceded by 2 priests beating time and others, Sethwab priests, carrying other banners, and a scribe of the roll of divine offerings with his pallet. The foremost wab, so priest, on the lower row carries a mace, before which onlookers fall down in adoration, while the priest, all the way in the back of this row, offers incense to Ramses III. The latter follows the procession attended by 2 rows of personal servants. The text over the procession in the upper row says, "The king of Upper and Lower Egypt he invokes with his father Sokar Osiris, who protects his father. I shall celebrate at its proper time. I shall hide the weariness in Abydos. I shall conceal the hidden things in the night of the festival of the weary-hearted one. I shall drive away the aggressor and restrain his confederates. I fill the offering tables and vessels. I restore the altars. I endow him who is in his chapel." And, "Hail to thee, my father Osiris. Thou art exalted upon thy standard," which is just a banner. "Thy great crown is in the hearts of those who are yonder, while the Aeneid are in thy following. They give thee praise and adoration in the residence of Nefertum, in Busiris, in the nome of Mendes, in Abydos, and in the temple of Ramses III in the estate of Amun. As long as thou endurest, mayest thou be living, happy, powerful, stable, and protected in the necropolis." There are a bunch more hails to other gods and more to Ramses III for priests while the barks are being carried through the streets. Just continues. During the festival of Sokar, the chief lector priest recited a series of ceremonial chants and expressions of devotion during the procession. These words included praise and celebration of sovereign, calling for their victory. This priest also commented on the god's sweet fragrance, showing a sensory appreciation. He expressed his dedication to performing actions the god loves and praises, demonstrating his commitment to service. The speech also mentions acts of reverence, such as kissing the earth and opening the way for the favored ones of Abydos, reflecting ritual humility. The speech also contains calls for protection and references to specific figures, such as a son of a prophet. These words are quite similar to passages found in ancient papyri, such as the papyrus Bamarind, making them seem rooted in more ancient traditions. So, long story short, if you got totally lost there, the scenes of the Festival of Sokar at the Temple of Ramses III in Medinet Habu are located in the upper register of the south and southeastern walls in the second courtyard. These pictorial documents are divided into 6 scenes. Scene 1, the offerings to Sokar, is when Ramses III is depicted as elevating offerings to Sokar, who sits on his throne and dais, with 2 groups of 3 deities, the Enneads, sitting behind him. The second is called the Censing of Khnum, which I didn't really talk about because the king wearing the Atef crown performs a censing ritual for the god Khnum, not Sokar. Scene 3 is called the Litany of Offerings, which Ramses performs a litany of offerings to Sokar with all his names while standing before the Henu bark. In Scene 4, the royal procession, with 16 priests carrying the Henu bark as the king follows behind. Scene 5 is the symbols of Nefertum and Horus, again the king following 2 rows of courtiers and royal sons. And 6, the grand procession, which is the largest scene in the series. It is divided into 2 rows and features priests carrying the 5 sacred boats, Nefertum banners, and box of 5 geese. This procession is led by musicians and scribes, while Ramses III continues to follow in the rear. An article on the Festival of Sokar discusses how uncertainty persists about whether certain early records specifically refer to a Sokar festival, given various iconographic and textual clues. The bark's ambiguous imagery, including the Mati boat depicted on the Palermo stone and mentioned in the pyramid text, is not uniquely linked to Sokar's Henu bark. Instead, it is part of a broader group of divine vessels, which also includes the boats of the sun god Ra and the king. Scholars have proposed that the Mati boat might have solar connections. For instance, King Neferkare is said to have built a Mati boat at his solar temple, complicating its identification as solely a Sokar-related object. The Palmero stone depicts a Mati boat with 2 falcons, one identified as Sokar Hinti Meti, I don't know, it has a 3 in it, maybe Meshisti, and the second possibly representing the king, the Horus king, suggesting that the festival could highlight royal authority as well as Sokar rulership. Furthermore, variations between texts like those in Medinet Habu and the Bremner Rind papyrus reflect textual discrepancies, likely due to hieratic corruptions, which can hinder precise understanding of the festival's original purpose and the liturgies performed during the processions. Well, this turned into quite a scenic detour. I know I've given a lot of background, but that's because Sokar is so fascinating. There's both so much and so little information, and so many interpretations for how he could be appearing in the textual evidence. There is a lot more to cover with the myths from the pyramid and coffin text, and his appearance in the underworld, syncretism, and finally how he compares to the Goa'uld in Stargate. Plus, there's a little puzzle piece, just for fun, showing that he still existed in pop culture before SG-1. So I hope I baited you enough to join me next time. So, thank you so much for listening to this episode on Sokar, the Hidden Onion. I hope you understand that title now. If you liked this, please write a review, please rate it, and leave a comment. Human engagement is the best way that more people can find my podcast in the future. Head over to the website to read about and follow along with the text of this document. See all the beautiful images that I included with it and the references at the end for all my citations. I would like to make a formal apology for my pronunciation of all the Egyptian words, most of which, in case you're not aware, are written without vowels most of the time, so I'm just trying to make an educated guess, and probably some English words as well. I swear I am trying, but I am not very good at it. If you know of any corrections, or you have more information, or any questions, feel free to email me directly at detoursandarchaeology@gmail.com, or you can contact me really anywhere. If you would like to support me in any monetary way, you can join my Patreon at a higher level than the free, which it is normally, or you can head over to my Printify shop, where I have shirts, stickers, mugs, various other objects, and some of my works of art that I'm selling. And I'm also open for commissions. Just email me directly at detoursandinarchaeology@gmail.com, or hit the contact link on my website to let me know what I can do, and we can discuss options if you want anything personalized. You can also follow me on Instagram, on Blue Sky, but I recommend following this podcast and checking out their direct website. I am on the Archaeology Podcast Network, so if you are new and listening to this for the first time, welcome. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it if you've listened to all of my episodes already. All the music comes from Scott Buckley, who can be found at scottbuckley.com.au. And for the fun fact this week, I am going to be going out into the field sometime in the next month or two. And so I'll be finding lots of glass bottles. So I thought I'd do something about that. So if you look at the anatomy of a wine bottle, specifically wine, you'll typically see 8 different parts. From top to bottom, you have the closure, the cork or the screw cap, capsule, the thin metal sheet that wraps around the closure, the neck, the shoulder, the body, label, and the heel, the part that makes contact with the table, and finally, the punt, or the punt. The last element is arguably the weirdest. The punt is the indentation in the bottom of the bottle found on wines across the world. Bottles have been designed with punts for centuries, and today some have deep, pronounced punts, some have shallow ones, and some have none at all. But why exactly does the punt exist? And does it serve any practical function? Yes. Before the Industrial Revolution and the rise of mass production, all wine bottles were crafted individually by glassblowers. During this process, the glassblower would attach a metal rod called a pontil, or punty, to the bottom of the bottle to manipulate and shape the glass. When the blowing process was complete, the pontil was removed, but it often left a large, sharp, jagged scar known as the pontil mark, which you can still see on a lot of hand-blown bottles today, and which you can see if you go find an antique bottle. And it is one of the ways that archaeologists and you can tell that something is really old, and thus worth recording. That protrusion could make the bottle unstable and at risk of scratching up a table surface or causing the bottle to break. So glassblowers pushed the pontil mark up into the bottle, making sure the container could stand upright with no sharp points at the bottom. This practice created the punt, which is still found on the bottle centuries later. While glassblowing techniques can explain the punt's original presence, they don't explain why machine-manufactured bottles still have these indents today. One explanation is that they add to the bottle's structural integrity, making the glass less likely to break when knocked against something or dropped. The Romans were famously fond of using arches in their aqueducts and bridges because they knew arches add strength by distributing weight through compression, and the indent of the bottle is itself an arch. Adding structural integrity to the bottle is particularly important for sparkling wines such as champagne or prosecco. According to the Wine Speculator, the pressure per square inch of inside of a bottle of bubbly is somewhere around 70 to 90 pounds, about double to triple the pressure in a car tire. The curved surface of the punt helps the bottle withstand the pressure without exploding. acting just like the arches do in architecture to help distribute forces. While it may only be a happy coincidence rather than an intentional design choice, the punt also helps filter the sediment that may be present in natural red wines, older bottles of red, and vintage ports. The indent at the bottom of the bottle allows sediment to settle evenly, collecting in a ring around the base rather than forming a flat layer on the bottom. This makes it easier for sommeliers and oenophiles, the fancy name for wine aficionados, to pour their wine, leaving the sediment behind. While punts continue to serve some practical purposes, their persistence in modern winemaking may have just as much to do with tradition and consumer perception. The depth of the indent is often seen as a sign of quality and craftsmanship due to its perceived links with traditional, high-end, and vintage wines. Some consumers, perhaps subconsciously, therefore associate a pronounced punt with higher quality product. There may also be more advanced marketing trickery here. A larger punt means more glass, which makes the bottle heavier, which again can be subconsciously connected with a higher quality product. Having a more pronounced punt can also make the bottle appear larger, and if a potential buyer is comparing two bottles and one looks slightly larger, they may be more inclined to go with that one, despite both bottles being marked as 750 ml of wine. That segment is from interestingfacts.com. They do have some interesting facts on there, and I like learning about it. And in the future, coming down the pipe, I will regale you with some history about Portugal and its changing history of the Art Nouveau movement. It seems a lot older than actual Art Nouveau. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep taking those detours. Thanks.